my friend and neighbor, Nancy Farber, and I went to a rummage sale one day, and it was a benefit for a historical society. So we were looking around, and my husband Harry and Marcy had to live with me for a long time, bemoaning the fact that we did not have a historical society. It was then that I remembered a slogan I had seen at the retreat center, St. Joseph's in Bailey's Harbor. It said, "I think someone should do something about that." Then I realized I might be the someone. And I looked at Marcy and Harry and Gary and said, "We can do this." Yes. Sue had given me Tom McKay's name. He represented the Wisconsin Historical Society and helped new groups get started. We spoke at great length. We set a date for him to come to Ellison Bay to attend a meeting. I would invite residents and introduce the possible formation of an Ellison Bay Historical Society. Tom would explain what we would have to do to accomplish our goal. I put an ad in the Advocate and hung posters up everywhere advertising the meeting. Would anyone show up? Well, 40 interested people showed up at that first meeting. I was thrilled. Most of them had no clue who I was. At the time, I was living in Milwaukee, commuting to Ellison Bay on weekends. I also was an active member of the Ellison Bay Women's Club. I was an active member in as many things as I could be, living at a distance away. But I did just happen to have been fortunate enough to marry Harry, who had a lovely historical log home on Mink River Road, and that enabled me to spend many more years here in person full time. He loved nature. He loved the quiet surroundings of Door County, Ellison Bay in particular, and he was an unknown resident in Ellison Bay. Poor guy. That was going to stop really fast. He would become known with the infamous title, "Well, Marilyn's husband will do that." I don't know, but that's Marilyn's husband, he can do that. So he was introduced to the community quickly. The next meeting was held in the Banzhaf backyard gazebo. Minutes of the first gathering were read. Excuse me, I might be drinking a lot of water today. Pour you some champagne?
No.
That's because I started with champagne. The minutes of the first gathering were read. The question then was, how many of you here would be interested in the formation of the the Ellison Bay Historical Society? My next request was for one of them to make a motion to develop and establish this historical society. All the people raised their hands. Everyone wanted to see it happen. The next thing was to have the motion seconded, which also happened very readily. When that was accomplished, I asked for volunteers or suggestions from the people there for a president, which fortunately I was honored to become the first president as well as the founder. Then we had a vice president, who was Stephanie DeLilly. There you are. Treasurer Don Luker, and Gary Farber, who was our secretary. The date is well remembered by Marcy, who unfortunately is not here tonight. It was their 37th wedding anniversary, and what she gave Gary as a present was to be nominated as the secretary. And he just loved her for that. He was a very good secretary. He excelled for many years, and we thank him out there for his many efforts. The vote was also taken to hold the meetings at 7 o'clock at the Women's Club on the third Monday of each month. That seemed to be most convenient for everyone. I'm going to use one of Karen's words here. Once people get excited about community project, a passion and a momentum of its own happens. Yes, there was a ton of paperwork to be done. A lot of red tape that needed to be done in order to be granted our 501c3 status. Anyone who's worked on a project like that knows it's not easy. Many I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. Much information was going to be exchanged by snail mail, fax, phone. This was all going to require having membership forms and envelopes printed. At that moment, we had 0 funds. Not a sou, not a penny, nothing. Where would we get the money from? Well, we stopped to think about what people enjoyed doing in town and what didn't cost a lot, but you enjoyed it. Well, what we decided to do was have a rummage sale, a fast and furious large rummage sale. Again, ads in the paper. We put signs up everywhere that we could. Wendy and Dan Peterson were kind enough to let us use the annex next door. And people started bringing their goodies. They checked their homes, their cabinets, their basements, their attics. You know what it's like to find things for a rummage sale. Well, people did it. Boxes and rummage appeared. They appeared not only at the annex, but they appeared in our living room. Fortunately, Harry was not coming up that weekend. He probably would have fainted. Marcy and I sat on the floor, enjoyed some wine while we were sorting through everything, and worked our way through a lot of interesting rummage, I tell you. One of the things that was not meant to be sold, but was Dan Peterson's exercise bike. It disappeared very quickly, I'm afraid at a very good price. Fortunately, that was worked out peacefully, and we maintained a good relationship with him. It was touch and go there for a little while. The cost of the merchandise sold or raffled was minimal. It covered the purchases that we needed to make. We got our membership forms. We had to determine the membership levels. So we had the forms, we had envelopes printed, and we got labels from Sturgeon Bay containing the names and addresses of every man, woman, and child who owned property in the 54210 zip code. An ambitious group of members to be met around the Banzhaf dining room table for 2 full days, completing this mass mailing. The job included folding the envelope, the invitation, inserting it in the envelope, sealing it, applying the label, the postage. You know what this is like if you've worked on a project like this. But finally, the mission was accomplished. Then we waited. In time, the membership grew. It went from being non-existent to a 2001 membership of 224 members in 2003. The name and logo were voted upon by the membership. We grew into the Allison Bay Girls Rock Historical Society. As the society continued to expand, so did our name. Today, thanks to the hard work of all of you, the Liberty Grove Historical Society is acknowledged and recognized as a 4-star society throughout the Midwest. And I think you deserve the applause. Early on, we wanted to do something to impact the community, something people could see, something they could talk about and support. What was there in town that would qualify? Surprise, Gus Klinke's garage. Everyone loved Gus Klinke's garage. People would come just to have their pictures taken, to get married in front of Gus Klinke's garage. Not married so far, but a lot of people would come for various purposes, and everybody loved the garage. During that time, I was gifted with being able to meet his daughter, Glenna, and of course, we all knew Scott. Scott was a longtime chef at Scott Chapelanis, I should say. He loved to have his last name used. He worked at the Hillside, and he created so many mouth-watering prime ribs for people. He's very warmly remembered. They were also very great ongoing supporters of the Historical Society. Whether it came to filling jugs with water to be able to put in our craft fair beverages to keep them cool, whatever it was that we needed, they gave us. Mark and Brian Fullingstead and Jim Grassi, they continued their building and carpentry skills and contributed them to restoring the garage. I think that building might outlast many others in Allison Bay. It was so firmly restored and supported, and it's still to this day the object of artists and photographers. You'll always see pictures of Gus Klinke's garage when you go to an art show in Door County. It's very popular. Next came Wally Daubner. Are any of you familiar with the Daubner family?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good. Wally came forward and suggested that we might want to purchase his family's home and property for the Historical Society. It's right on the corner of Highway 42 and NB. It would be our permanent site. In order to consider that possibility, we had to raise money. Sound familiar? We had to raise money for our down payment. Okay, once again, what was popular in Door County to both visitors and guests, residents, everyone? Marcy and I pooled our observation and event planning skills. I presented the idea to members at our next meeting. Excuse me. And approval was given. Voila, we were going to have our first art and craft fair on the Daubner property. The Ellison Bay Historical Society was thrilled with the idea. We had artists, we had craftspeople of all kinds, we had games for adults and for kids. As an example, one of the fun things we had, Dale and Gail Helen had built a full-sized jail cell on wheels. Dale was dressed in a cop costume. People paid him to arrest someone for a bogus crime. They were jailed in front of everyone, very visibly. And then they had to convince someone else to pay their fine so they could get released from jail. It was a great way to make money, which we did a lot of, and have a lot of fun. Carol Lemon's North Porth restaurant and Stephanie's close affiliation with the Viking always made our food offerings appealing. Tony Anhauser was our #1 chef. An item that became a standard at each and every fair was also introduced, the infamous potato blossom. Quite sweet. One year it was raining. My daughter and a couple other volunteers set up the fryer in the barn. Afterward, we realized that we could have fried more than the potatoes. We could have been done in the barn for sure. From then on, we built an umbrella and a shelter to keep us safe from weather obstacles. Someone that's here, 2 people in fact are here, who probably have very strong right arms. Sheila and Walt probably cleaned up 1,000 potatoes in order to prepare them for this venture every year. So they're really understanding what I'm talking about. As an aside, Russell Smith, who you mentioned a little bit, Russell Smith, who will be 86 this week, asked us if he could display a tractor or 2 on the premises. Great idea. As we all know, the tractor show has developed into a fantastic statewide attraction. Due to the building restrictions, we were unable to purchase that particular property, but the event was and is always still a tremendous success. Marcy and I back then began to plan the next one immediately. Gary and Harry were our biggest supporters. A short time later, Russell and Virginia Hansen invited Gary and I to meet with them at their home. They brought up the possibility of the Historical Society presenting the fair on their property and the Historical Society purchasing their home and land as its permanent site. Thank you, God. Miracles don't happen overnight. It took many meetings and much discussion. Colin Dahl became our legal representative and still is. He assisted us with more of our dotting of I's and crossing of T's, but the transaction was agreed upon on June 16, 2003. Obviously, the decision was put to a vote, passing easily. It had to be a society vote because raising funds to make our payments on the mortgage and to pay it off was to become the #1 goal, and it still is. I am still a believer that there are benefactors out there and in here that will make this happen, and soon. We continue to develop fundraisers to accomplish that goal. George Hoyt and Carol Lemon organized the, and Pastor Foster. Anyone remember Pastor Foster?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh, yes. They organized the spaghetti dinner and held the first one at Shepherd of the Bay Church. Now it's held at our very supportive, again, Viking. So say thank you to them when you go in there, Sue, and tell them that they were talked about positively a lot tonight. Now we had the taste of Northern Door come up next. We gave restaurants, local restaurants, an opportunity to show off their gourmet delights, and they did very well. Wine distributors were invited to do the same, and they did. Merchants, again, contributed items to use for prizes at our silent auction. We did that a lot, and I have to really compliment the donors. All of the businesses in this area were a great help. At one of our early meetings, Barbara Pedersen, who I'm sure many of you remember, came in wearing an Ellison Bay t-shirt from another era, way far away. Well, that immediately gave us a new idea. Okay, Renee Sisson and I and Marcy got together and put a new design together. Good old Gus Klinke's garage. And we ordered and designed t-shirts, sweatshirts, totes, baseball caps, you name it, we came up with it. So, we never let the grass grow under our feet. We always thought of some other way to make money. The arrival of spring brought with it the opportunity to organize a flower sale. For the very first one, Frank and Carol Weber and I drove out to Sturgeon Bay. There is still a wonderful greenhouse out there, and I think it's by the name of Maas, M-A-A-S. They helped us lower the price to something that was unbelievable, and we still made money on the flowers that we sold. We drove out to the greenhouse in my Jeep and in their station wagon and loaded it as full of flowers as we could. We did that a couple of times and got them back here into the garage. They were beautiful, and that continued on for a number of years. I think a lot of people still have bushes and flowers, the perennials that are still growing in their yard. It's impossible to mention fundraisers without bringing up the fish boil. Elaine Johnson had connections with the fishermen in Door County, and that made it possible for her to supply our fish boils with nothing but the best, and a lot of it. The Viking generously provided the place and the power. Our society provided the elbow grease for cleanup, serving, and cleanup some more. What a terrific team effort. Everyone enjoyed this fundraiser so much. We got to meet a lot of people, got to visit with them, meet new people, and you wouldn't enjoy a fish boil. It was a great team effort. It's still a great place to meet friends, family, and newcomers, plus raise money. The real spark and spirit of the society began to develop when Jane Nelson and I got together to develop a museum committee. We wanted to acquire and classify memorabilia from local families. I was fortunate to accompany Jane to her family home and to view and choose many of our very popular early exhibits. Her mother's wedding gown was one very popular one and still is. It's beautiful. A great filing and identification system was created. Exhibits often change, and docents give wonderful tours. Everyone that goes into it comes away feeling well informed about what early life was like in Door County, particularly our area. And we thank everyone that takes part in that venture. That will be an ongoing one, putting it mildly. In 2005, a book describing the history of Liberty Grove was written by Joseph Zarowski. We have copies available in case you don't have one or want to get a gift for someone back home. He did this in conjunction with a number of local residents. In 128 pages, you will find pictures, you'll find prose that truly draw a complete picture. Good old days. They are wonderful books. And please don't hesitate to sell them in your local stores outside of Ellison Bay. I live in Mequon, and we go to Cedarburg a lot. They have books there from every town you can think of. And I don't see ours. So anyone who plans on going traveling, take a couple along and see if you can get the people to buy them. They're worth it. Now, if the museum provided the spark and the spirit, the arrival of historical buildings on our site brought with them the soul. It came alive. Thanks to the efforts of ambitious, hardworking members, we now have 7 historical buildings on our site, portraying every existing aspect of life in our treasured Liberty Grove back to the 1800s. This is a place for people to gather, to see how the structures, the land, the culture, the social life of all the generations gone by have been blended together historically to create our present day Liberty Grove. We will continue to create. We will accomplish our goal. Know that when I say we, I mean all of the believers and dreamers and all those out there that you're going to tell about tonight's meeting and say, hey, get on the ball, join us, have fun with us, because everything that we have ever done from the beginning, that was essential. It had to be fun. I don't like to do things that aren't fun. Those of you that know me here know that. So everything we do from day one had to be fun. Red wine was included occasionally as a bonus. But, we're just going to keep doing this. And I know you all dream and believe along with me. So keep up the good work.